When it comes to solving most of our problems, we can make things really simple or complicated. We can look at our problems that are within our control or problems that are outside our control. We can either get reconnected or we can get distracted, or we can start with the structure of an argument using logic or the contents. And then we have two main categories. We have knowledge and problems of knowledge. I have two ways to illustrate that. I've got a special teaching tool, the Ultimate Schematic, with the Ultimate Solution playlist to back up all of the pieces to that puzzle. And then I have a special survey where I group people into 17 main groups. And then there are two groups of needs we must satisfy. There are two portals that we must go through. And then there are two main obstacles. And that would be our belief system and the dark side to our behavior. Hello, my name is John Rose. If you can't tell, I like to group things in twos. I like to try to analyze things as many ways as I can to help make some sense out of all of this. And I like to make things simple, not complicated. How do we do it? You look at the problems that are within your control, your lifestyle choices. Can't do a whole lot about accidents and acts of nature, can you? Acts of war, crime, and violence, we have limited control, but most of our problems are self-inflicted lifestyle choices. And if you really want to make things simple, you are either getting reconnected, you're either bumping up those biophotons, or everything else is a distraction. Now, we have to be distracted because there is some downstream work we need to do. But we got to go upstream. We got to get reconnected. We got to correct the fall of mankind. We got to stop destroying the biophotons that feed one of our senses. So now we have the wrong mentality. That's where it all begins. We've got the wrong mentality. And then when we go looking for the solutions, what do? We get lost in the details, the contents. If you want to make things simple, use logic. And when you do, there are two requirements, two criteria. Two tests that have to be passed. The first test is simple, make things simple. It's the structure test. Our experts fail that test. We do that because we want to do what Sherlock Holmes would do, exclude the impossible. When we can exclude the systems that are trying to solve our problems, whatever remains might be possible. But when we can exclude those clowns, you don't have to get lost in the details. Who cares about their contents? And that's what they're always going to try to do, aren't they? They're going to always try to throw the contents at you. We don't need to look at your contents. You already failed one of the tests. When you use logic, there are two tests you got to pass. If you fail one of them, it doesn't matter. That's why you always start simple. That's why Rose's Law. Don't go looking for logical fallacies in a system with an invalid structure. That was one of my greatest epiphanies ever. I remember sharing that one time with a woman that had a PhD in math, and she didn't know what I meant because she was formally miseducated. Every field that's supposed to solve our problems is intentionally misled. I remember when I first started studying logic, and I looked at the basic introductory book for logic, I thought, God, whoever wrote the book's not even logical. Didn't even put the information in the right sequence, and there's so much of it. There's only two things we need to know about logic, and it's how we're wired. Our brains are wired for pleasure and pain. It's a form of two-value logic. Pleasure and pain. Pain, disease, that's part of our feedback system. The other thing every human is born with is the fact they're living systems. And all living systems are subject to the law of cause and effect, just like all matter is subject to Newton's third law of motion, the law of action and reaction. Ordered pairs. We use that to make sure we don't get tricked and fooled. That's the purpose of my special teaching tool. Remember, we either have knowledge or problems of knowledge. Now, there's two ways I explain that. One is by my special teaching tool, the Ultimate Schematic. Identify 281 main pieces. The first 21 pieces are 21 main problems of knowledge. Number one problem of knowledge, we don't have it. That's the knowledge we need. Our main obstacle, we don't have it. Then there are 20 reasons why we can't find that knowledge. The number one reason why we don't know is because we have false knowledge in its place. Remember, we cannot learn anything when we think we already know. So right now we have two forms of ignorance that are killing us. There's the knowledge we're missing, And then there's that false knowledge we have in its place. We superimpose it into our belief system. And now when we hear the truth, we laugh at it. We say, oh, that can't be the truth. That's why you got to empty your cup, my friends. Those problems of knowledge are tricky. That's also why I create a survey to help illustrate to people why when you tell people the truth, you don't just give them one piece of the puzzle. There's two pieces you have to worry about. Not just the knowledge, you got the problems, the knowledge. If you've been on the hero's journey long enough, you understand the obstacles. And then you'll have people try to dissuade you from doing that because they're either useful idiots, not knowing what you need to do, or they're shills trying to discourage you, saying, yeah, if we just poo-poo on them, they'll stop. And this happens all the time. You see it all the time, and people give in. They're not aware of how things work. You got to become educated. You got to read the con artist handbook. You have to read the Hasbara handbook to see how you're being manipulated, so that you don't understand the importance that we have these two main categories. And those problems or knowledge is what's keeping us from finding the knowledge we need. So, there are two groups of needs we must satisfy. I've said this over and over and over in my videos. It's all we have to do. There's only one thing we have to do to get out of the hell we're in, is satisfy these two groups of needs. But remember, most of us are not willing and able to do that, which is why I added 2 preliminary steps to the only thing we had to do there by perfecting a 3-step process. First step addresses the willingness issue on a temporary basis. Solid food vacation on juices. That's the first step. Second step, we got to correct these 5 main mistakes on a permanent basis. That's where we adapt a raw vegan diet with an understanding. We got 2 groups of needs. The raw vegan diet only satisfies the first group, our species-specific diet, where we have anatomical limitations that we're given at birth. But we also have anatomical limitations which created another group of needs. Not to mention the environment's damaged also. So a raw vegan diet is an ideal diet in an ideal world. We no longer live there, and you can't use the excuse that things aren't natural anymore for us not to recognize those limitations. But remember, some of us may not be able to survive on that alone because we have this other group of needs. So in effect, what we have are 2 portals, or more specifically, 2 doorways we have to go through to solve virtually every problem that we face. I've said this before in other videos, if you see if I can test y'all's memory. We can't go back the way we came. If you look at the ultimate schematic, what happened to us is we didn't apply what we know for some reason. We slid down and we got into that negative B box of mistakes. That's how we got there initially. That's the fall of mankind. Bad application to the first thing we mastered. Cooking our food, destroyed the biophotons, wrong mentality. Now we got all these problems in the negative C box. But that's not how we get there now. We start our journey off in life in that negative A box of false knowledge because of our traditions, one of those problems of knowledge, where we're taught to make the mistakes. So in order to get back to where we need to be back in paradise, in order to get out of Plato's cave, we can't go back the same way. There's 2 portals we got to go through. The first portal is where those 19 main obstacles are that come from the 21 main problems of knowledge. And I'll explain all that in more detail. I'm not going to go into detail now. Go to my other videos, the Ultimate Schematic. Anytime you're ever uncertain what I mean about anything, go to the Ultimate Solution, look at my index, and you can see where I explain everything in all those different 11-part videos. So if you don't know what I mean by this, we'll look at that little chart and you'll be able to access that video that explains it in more detail. But what we're talking about right now is getting out of this negative A box of false knowledge. There's a doorway we got to go through. There are obstacles that can keep us there. That's the first doorway we got to go through. And then we got to find that knowledge we're missing. And once you find it, there's another portal we got to go through to the next plus positive action box. Instead of mistakes, wrong actions, right actions. Apply what you know. Satisfy your needs. And then it's an automatic, you get into paradise. That's how we get to paradise. There are 2 portals to paradise. 2 doorways to get back to where we were before the fall of mankind, where we lost our golden ages, and now we're in the dark ages down here in the negative C box of all these problems. And when we look at our problems, they're either within our control, outside our control. Remember, I started off simple or complicated. The problem we have is if we look at that negative C box, go to my ultimate schematic, and you'll see I labeled those 103 and 104. 103 are the problems that are 100% within our control. 104 are problems that are not 100% within our control. The problem with our so-called experts is they've been tricked into thinking that most of our 103s that are within our control are really 104s are outside of control, and now we got to use some drugs to interfere with the process so it doesn't happen. Our so-called experts don't know that most of what they're doing to us is self-inflicted, but yet they admitted that back in, what was it, 1992 or 93, somewhere back then. The New England Journal of Medicine came out and admitted 70% of our diseases are lifestyle related, and that number is way too low. It's like 100, because even genetics comes from the lifestyles from the previous generation. So, 2 portals, that's all we have to do. And the main thing is, if we look at all those problems of knowledge, there's actually a total of 55 problems of knowledge altogether. And the simplest way to deal with every one of those problems is to test an idea as time has come. That's why I say this in every video. I've looked at all the pieces. I can tell my story, take any piece you want, and I can begin my story from there. But I know it always comes back to you taking charge, you finding the courage to climb the unexplored mountain, to go where few have gone, so you can see what few have seen. So you can have a brand new reference and challenge all those old references that have been bombarded into our brains. It's the only way you have a chance. Once again, 2 main obstacles. Our belief system and the dark side of our behavior, more specifically, the darkest of the dark side of our behavior, those 6 psychopaths who never cry. They'll never shed a tear for you, my friends. And remember, they're a reflection of us. There's only one way to defeat them. It's not to go point your finger at them. There they are, go get them, go get them. No. We've got to change. And when we change, the whole world changes. And then, yes, that's right, we're all in for a treat.